Hey folks, and welcome back to Sub2 Investor. In this show, I want to introduce the BRRRR-Sub2 model. This is going to be the cutting edge strategy, I think, in today's real estate market. Things have changed. The Sub2 deals in the 2s, 3s, 4, even 5% ranges are becoming harder to find. I have noticed that in my own marketing. So what are you going to do if you've been focusing on buying subject to? You really are allured to this whole idea of getting away from the bank, doing owner financing, doing lease options, taking over debt. Well, there's a model that I am establishing right now in my business, and I want to share it with you. It's called the BRRRR-Sub2 model. I don't think anybody out there is talking about it, and to me, it's where it's at. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this. When I look at my expired MLS list and low equity on market list, a lot of the interest rates are in the 6s and 7s now, and the deals are just very marginal at best. So how do we make great deals? How do we find great deals in the zip codes where we know we are going to slay? We are going to absolutely crush it. When we put the house out, we put those bandit signs out saying owner finance, owner to owner, rent to own, call this number. That's where you want to be doing the deals. Don't be chasing deals in markets where you have no idea how it's going to perform. So how do you go find a deal? How do you go find a deal if there aren't too many Sub2 deals in those neighborhoods available? Here's the strategy that I developed. I want to share it with you, and it's the BRRRR-Sub2 strategy. This is nothing crazy, but it might sound a little crazy. But essentially, go buy a good cash deal. Learn how to buy a good cash deal. It begins buying cash. So in the BRRRR strategy, for those of you who aren't aware, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. The whole concept is that you have to buy cash. You got to find a good cash deal. Yeah, that's how it begins. We're going to go find a good cash deal. Now, thankfully, I've been developing a system on how to go find good cash deals consistently. A pipeline where every day you wake up and there might be a new cash deal prospect in the pipeline for you to look at. So you got to go find a good cash deal. Now, here's the nice thing. Good cash deals are a lot easier to find than good Sub2 deals are with those good low interest rates. This is actually even more of a scalable model than the Sub2 model in competitive sellers markets, where you can go find a good cash deal with relative ease, but the Sub2 deals are a little bit harder to find. So you have to develop a system to go find a good cash deal. So you're going to go find that deal and you're going to go buy that deal. You're going to take it down with either hard money or private money. Now, this is something else that we can talk about. How do you find a good hard money lender? Even better, a good private money lender. So you're going to go find a good deal first, identify a good deal, learn how to analyze cash properties, analyze the deal. You're going to go buy the deal using somebody else's money. Then you're going to go out, you're going to rehab anything you need to rehab, renovate anything you need to renovate, carpet and paint, great. I'm not remodeling a kitchen. I'm not remodeling a bathroom. I'm not doing any other major remodeling. That's the extent of the rehab you want to do, because you want to be able to turn these quickly. And your buyers, who are all going to be seller financed buyers, lease option buyers, they're not going to care as much because you are willing to finance the property. You're going to do the renovations. You bought, you rehabbed. Now it's time to place a tenant buyer or a buyer, depending on if you're doing a lease option or owner finance. You're going to place somebody in that property. You're going to place somebody in that property. They're going to be paying probably a little bit above market rental rates, which is great because when you go to refinance, yes, you do have to have good credit, decent credit, and the ability to go get a DSCR loan. A DSCR loan is a debt coverage service ratio loan. It's a 30-year fixed rate loan. There's usually prepayment penalties of like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Not a huge deal. But if you have good credit, then you're going to get a decent interest rate. It's going to be above the average rates, but not crazy. So you're going to refinance. And what's going to happen is, you're going to be getting really top-notch rents. And you're going to be able to show that to the appraiser. And you're going to be able to, therefore, take out as big of a loan as you possibly can. Even though you didn't fully renovate the property, you do have to refinance it. And hopefully that appraisal comes back up here at a premium number, and you're going to be able to pay off then everything that you owe to your private lender or your hard money lender from whom you borrowed cash to close on the property and renovate the property, or you're borrowing enough to close and renovate. Now, once you do that, you are essentially done with the deal. There's some nuances and intricacies for sure. What's cool is that when you're running numbers, you are going to take into account the fact that you'll be getting a down payment or a purchase option fee from the person you put in the property who wants to buy that house, which means if there's a gap between how much you borrowed and then how much you can get a loan for with your refinance, hopefully your buyer's down payment is enough to bridge that gap or bridge the majority of that gap, which is so cool. This is not something that short-term rental people, mid-term rental people, long-term rental people get to do. They are sinking capital into that property. They are not getting a down payment from any kind of buyer in the property, but we do, which means the deals we buy don't have to be generally as good of numbers as they do for somebody wanting to do a long-term rental and refinance out all of the money they put into the property so that they could be zero in when all is said and done. We have a major advantage on those people who might be bidding on the same property we're bidding on. Chances are, all things equal, we can bid a little bit higher because we're getting a down payment or a option fee from the resident who wants to buy the house from us. So I'm going to show you all this. I'm going to pull up my deal evaluator. And if you don't have the deal evaluator, let me just say it is a great investment. I don't want to push it. I don't want you to feel pressure to have to buy it. But if you are running numbers, you need a tool like this. So you'd either got to build this tool yourself, or have a calculator, have a spreadsheet where everything makes sense with amortization schedules and all that stuff. Or you could just go get mine from my website, sub2investor.com. And anytime I make a substantial update, I am re-uploading it to my website where you could just go there and download it again. I'm never going to ask for you to buy it again if I make an upgrade. So that's really cool. So I'm going to pull up my deal evaluator right now and walk you through the numbers on an actual deal that I'm doing so that you can see how the numbers will pan out. All right, now here is the Sub2 Investor Deal Evaluator. It is a tool that I use very frequently, almost every day, to analyze deals. And one thing I did here to improve it was to have a toggle button where you can select the kind of deal that you are looking at and analyzing. So if it's subject to, you can select subject to. And if you're going to do like self-funding, you can click self-funding, and then it'll block out the irrelevant sections and highlight just the relevant sections. This is still sort of in beta version. There are some bugs, so bear with me. If you do ever get this calculator and you catch an error, please email me, let me know, and I will try and fix it immediately, send you the updated version. I'm serious. On this particular model, the cash Sub2 model, the BRRRR-Sub2 model, we're gonna buy it cash, okay? And then we're going to we're gonna DSCR loan refinance to pay off the cash private money loan. I have the numbers already inputted on this particular deal. I would say that this is not an amazing deal, but this is a deal that I'm doing as I'm proving this concept and establishing this concept for the team so that we can go out there and just rinse and repeat this model. This is a decent deal because we're gonna make all the money we leave in the deal, which is gonna be a little bit probably. We'll make it all back within 12 months. And anytime you can make any money you leave in a deal back within a year, to me, that's a good deal. It's a deal I should do. So this deal, I'm not even really wanting to talk about how I got the deal because it's really a whole different conversation on how you go find good cash deals. But this is a deal I found from a wholesaler. I bought this from a wholesaler with whom I developed a relationship by buying a different property from them, slightly overpaying. And on this one, I'd say I got a pretty decent deal. He knew I was legit, would close because I had done another deal with him previously. And so that's all part of my strategy. Just develop, be solid for these people. And when you say you can do a number, when they say, okay, we'll accept it, like you better do it. This is cash. In my estimation, the ARV of the house is about 170K. It's about 170K. We ran some comps before we got it under contract, and we think 170K is about a fair assessment. Now, here is the estimated rehab to obtain the ARV. How much money would it take to get this house to the after repair value so that it would sell for this number on the market? Put that number right here, because that's going to tell you what your fair market value is for the house. That this house, if just cleaned up and listed on the market with a realtor, should go for the ARV minus the repairs. That's a crude way, but in my opinion, a sufficient way to determine really the home's value today, like right now, before you buy it. So in our estimation, about 25K to bring the house up to 170K. So the fair market value would be about 145K. I hope that makes sense. Now, this is a little bit tricky on the cash expenses side because there is a wholesaler involved and they did get a wholesale fee. They didn't tack it onto the sales price. Like, here's the price plus the wholesale fee. What I bought it for was the total price including the wholesaler fee. So I know that you'd think I should put a wholesaler fee number here. I think they made only 5K on the deal. I abstained from doing that because we bought it all cash. It wasn't like a sub-2 deal where you take over the loan and then you bring additional cash to whoever at closing, like a wholesaler. On a sub-2 deal, you definitely would want to put the wholesale fee right there, but I didn't. So let's keep going through here. There was no realtor commission. Actually, there was, but again, that was paid separately, not on the HUD. So it didn't factor into the cash expense because this whole column is how much cash I have to bring to closing in addition to the purchase price. So not including the purchase price, just in addition to the purchase price of the house, the sales price of the house. So I had to pay closing costs, about $1,500. I had to pay insurance, about $1,400. Then I determined that I'm going to only put $15,000 tops into this house before I sell it or do a rent to own on it. And so I'm not going to put the full 25K. The only reason I had to establish this number was to know what the value of the house is. I'm only going to put 15K in it. And yeah, I'm going to try and sell it for over 170 because I'm selling it owner financing. And we'll see how that goes. Maybe I have to go a little bit lower or just stick at 170, but I am going to get a premium for sure. But I'm rarely going to put the full rehab amount into a house. I'm just going to try and get it really, really, really clean and do any necessary repairs that, if I didn't do them, would detract any potential buyers from looking at the house or being interested. So in addition to the sales price, I needed $1,500 plus $1,400 plus 15 grand. So I needed $17,900 in addition to the sales price. So we'll just call that $18,000. Okay. There was no private money or hard money costs because I used private money. And I'll talk about that in a second, besides the interest that they're getting paid. And then here's a little section for your escrow, for your taxes and insurance, and HOA if there is HOA. In this case, you want to be budgeting each month that you buy a property cash for your taxes and insurance costs, because each month you hold property, you are going to be liable to pay this amount down here, $308 per month, even if it's all paid in one lump sum at the end of the year or when the insurance premium is due. You are incurring costs every single month for holding it. So you want to budget that in to the numbers of the deal. Now down here, all of this is blocked out because that's like sub-2 stuff that's not necessary. Now it gets a little bit confusing, so bear with me. Here's a section on private money loan, hard money loan. If you're going to fund these cash deals with interest only funding, which is how you're going to probably fund the deal. This is how we funded our deals. This is how we're going to fund all our cash deals. It's interest only, private money loan or hard money loan. That's just like a very standard type of loan. It's first lien position. We're going to use somebody else's money. Here is our cash offer price. Now, if you get this deal evaluator, it's going to be set to 75% of the fair market value. That's sort of the default. And I forget exactly what that yields in this case. We ended up settling on 113. And so I just put the number in here because you can override the formula commands. So we needed 113 to buy the house, and included within that was paying the wholesaler and all that stuff. So that was like the total that we needed to do the deal at closing to just buy it. That was like the purchase price. However, we also, remember, need about 18 grand for everything else that we're going to do with this deal. So the loan amount with our private money lender would really be like 113 plus 15. However, we decided to borrow a little bit more because in the event that this rehab goes over budget, we want to be prepared. And so our private money lender was comfortable lending a little bit more, which is actually okay for them because they're just going to get a little bit more interest. So we ended up borrowing 140 grand, which is more than enough to rehab the property, obviously buy it, pay for insurance, pay for the repairs, pay for the closing costs. We might have some utility bills, stuff like that. And what we agreed on with our private money lender is to borrow at 12% interest only. The length of the loan actually maps to your holding time down here in this cell, which I put as 4 months. But if you were doing this for the first time, you probably want to budget it at 6 months just to be conservative. But I think this deal will probably get done in 3 months, but I'm just going to put 4 months to be a little bit more conservative. So if we pay them back after 4 months, they are going to get all their money back, 140K plus the 5,600. That's their interest income for lending. Okay. So they're going to make a decent little chunk there. Now you have to factor into this whole thing, the DSCR loan. We are thinking that we are going to be able to get this thing to appraise for around 170, maybe 165 if we're conservative. I think that we went off the 165 conservative number, and your DSCR lender will likely lend 75% loan to value. I think actually we're banking on getting this thing to appraise at 170 because we are going to refinish the floors, paints, replace a bunch of doors, make it look kind of nice. So if it appraises at 170 and our DSCR lender will loan only 75% of the appraised value, then they will give us a loan for $127,500. We went a little below that thinking, yeah, we're going to make it look nice, but we're not going to fully do everything. So maybe it'll only appraise a little bit less than 170. So we're being a little conservative here, figuring that it might appraise for 167, 168 or something. And so we'll be able to get a loan for 125K around from our DSCR lender. The interest rate on that loan is going to be about 7%. Now that might go up, it might go down, hopefully not much within this 4-month period. If you don't have great credit, it might be a little bit higher. So it's a 30-year loan from the DSCR lender. Now they're going to have some fees that they're going to charge you to originate the loan. So I put those at about 3% of the loan. So you're going to have to pay some fees up front, which means that there's this financing gap because you owe the private money lender, remember, 140 plus 5,600. Then you have to pay this 3,700 amount, right? But you're only getting 125K back. So that's not enough money. Then see, this is where I'm talking about. If you're a buy and hold guy, you are in the hole, 25 grand. You're not getting any of that money back on the front end of this deal. Let me just do the numbers. So we got to pay back 140 to our lender plus 5,600 in interest plus this origination fee. So we're at 149,350 minus our loan of 125K. And so there we go. There's the gap. I call that a financing gap. Okay. So, but I'm not freaking out about this financing gap. Why? Why am I not freaking out about this financing gap? It is a very important number because if this number is too high, you can't do the deal. If it's very low, then it's going to be probably a really good deal. Anyways, before I get to that, here is the P&I, the principal and interest on our DSCR loan, and then the projected PIT. So our projected loan after we refinance this deal. The lender does their appraiser. They say, yeah, we'll give you 125K. We'll pay off all this. However, you're going to have to bring a check to closing of 25K. Where do we get that money from? Well, we're going to get it from our buyer, or we're going to at least get most of it from our buyer. But let's go to the disposition details tab. We're going to mark this price of this house up quite a bit. It's kind of funny here. This is not a perfect calculator. You're going to have to make some adjustments. After we put 15K into the house, it's going to be worth a lot more than this fair market value, 145. Going to be closer to 170. And so we think we'll probably mark it up close to 180. Now that might be aggressive. We're definitely going to be above 170 on. So I would say putting it at about close to 180 is a really solid bet for that house. Here's our end buyer's sales price. We're going to try and sell it for about 180. Our equity spread between our loan, right? Because our loan is 125K with the 30-year DSCR lender, okay? But if we're going to finance it to a buyer, their loan is going to be here, 161K. If they bring this down payment and they're buying it for this price, their loan is going to be this. which creates an equity spread. That's a back end spread. Now, this is so cool. This is so cool because you don't get this on sub-2 deals. You just don't get this on sub-2 deals. You usually are extremely low equity. Like this number down here is often 5K, 10K, 0K. Doing this BRRRR sub-2 model forces you to have equity. Buying cash forces you to have equity, and that's going to protect you if things go wrong. You have to take the property back and sell it. You're going to be a lot more secure than on a sub-2 to seller financing model. 10% down payment, definitely doable, and that's conservative in my opinion for this neighborhood. I bet we can get higher, but I'm going to leave it here at 10% to see what happens. Now, I have a little thing over here that says rent estimate. So the rent estimate for this house is $1,544, and if we get a 9.5 or close to a 10% interest rate on this deal where our buyer's paying $1,700 a month about, then this creates a delta. I call this the rent to PITI delta. This is the difference between what the house would rent for versus what the mortgage payment is on owner financing. And I like to just look at that number. It's below 200, which is great. In my opinion, pushing 500 is risky. Anything above 500 is risky. Even 500 is a little risky. But if you are within 200, 300, I think in general, people are willing to pay a little bit more than it would cost to rent that house in order to own it. They would be willing to pay $200 more a month, own it rather than rent it. And so I feel that this is definitely doable. 9.95 interest rate, 10% down. Sales price here, we are getting above what the house would even rent for. This is why you have to know my exit strategy. It's not about sub-2 on acquisition, it's about sub-2 on disposition. This is where the money's at, and I'm going to say this a million times. Who cares about sub-2? It's about your exit strategy. And yes, my exit strategy entails sub-2. Yeah, I'm going to sell it and keep the loan on it, which means my buyer is going to buy it sub-2 from me. Check out the cash flow down at the bottom. You have to go down here to see the cash summary tab. This is the cash summary tab. Do not look at the sub-2 summary tab. I got 3 sub-2 summary tabs depending on how you fund those sub-2 deals, but you got to go scroll down to the cash summary tab. The cash summary section down here is going to tell you that if we only get 18 grand, 10% from our buyer, we actually are leaving money in the deal. Because remember this whole financing gap situation over here? Well, we're not leaving 25K in the deal. That's going to be mitigated by our down payment when we collect 18K. So 25 minus 18 is about 7K. So we'd be leaving about 7K, maybe 6K, whatever, in the deal. However, we're cash flowing. Check this out, $582 a month. But what the heck, Hans? Your interest rate on the loan is 7%. That sucks. Look at your DSCR interest rate 7. It sucks. Why don't you just go buy sub-2? You know, what are you doing buying 7%? I didn't buy 7%. I bought at a discount cash. I forced the appreciation by doing a little bit of renovation. And then I leveraged my great credit and got a loan, not at like 100% loan to value, at 75% loan to value. I actually have equity, guys. Remember this here? I have equity. Even if I had to sell this house on the market, I'd probably pocket 5 to 10K. It's not much on a flip like this. It wouldn't be worth it to flip for 10K. Waste of time. Hold on to it and then look at your profitability tab on the back end. If your buyer stays in this house for 10 years, paying you monthly, you're going to make $110,000 on the deal. Why would you ever sell this as a flip? Why would you ever wholesale this deal? Why would you do this? You hold on to any piece of real estate long enough, it's going to make you money. It's going to cash flow you. Passive income is great, but massive passive income is great. You need to be able to scale this, which is why we would do a lease purchase option or a owner finance exit. I'm not a genius. I didn't figure all this stuff out. I just have been keeping my ears open, my eyes open, learning from the best people I feel are reputable and tweaking the model to what I really think makes sense for myself. If you like it, great. If you don't, fantastic. Do it. Do what works for you. To me, this makes the most sense. I don't mind leaving 7 grand in the deal, even if I only get this, because I am going to make that up, guys, in 11 months. 11 months, I am cash neutral of the deal. My cash on cash return is 110%. But here's the thing. When you start to buy these houses in areas you know buyers are looking for houses, chances are that you're going to have a lot of interest, and chances are that you might be able to get 15% down. Somebody's going to come in guns blazing. No, I want this house. I got 25K or I got 27K. Give it to me. I might start to negotiate interest rate. They might say, yeah, can you come down a little bit on interest rate? I might say, sure. If that means I'm walking away with cash from this deal, if a buyer brought 15% down, I'm walking away with cash. It's not a lot of cash. It's like $2,600. It's hardly anything in the grand scheme of things, but I don't have to leave any money in the deal. If I bought this deal sub 2 in some crazy place, I don't know if there's buyers, then where's my confidence on getting that level of a down payment? My confidence goes down to, shoot, maybe I got to do a lease option and only get 5%. In a worst case scenario, I'm leaving friggin' $15K in that deal. That's not good. It might be okay if you have the money, it's fine. If you have limited funds, you don't want to leave money in these deals, buy in a good neighborhood. You can probably get 10% relatively easily. You could probably get more if you just waited for the right buyer, and then you're looking at a infinite cash on cash return. Why would you not do this? I don't understand. This is the model. BRRRR sub 2. You're going to BRRRR it out and then you're going to sell it on seller financing, which involves selling it subject to the existing mortgage. The difference is that the existing mortgage is this DSCR loan in your company's name. Yeah, you're going to leave it in your LLC's name and you're going to sell it subject to an end buyer doing a lease option or contract for deed or even a wraparound. I know it's a whole can of worms. How do you do that with the DSCR? Is it risky? Will the loan get called due? Things we can discuss in future videos, on coaching calls, whatever. This is the model right now. For me, I think it makes the most sense. Target those buy boxes. Establish your buy box. You got to know your buy box. Where does it make sense to buy these houses? Where is the best area, the best zip codes, the best price points? That's very crucial. And then start developing a pipeline, a system to start looking at these deals on a daily basis. Get a tool like my deal evaluator. Even if it's not my evaluator, you need to have a tool to be running numbers on these deals on a daily/weekly basis so that you can identify what's a good one, what's a bad one, what's an okay one relative to what's out there. And then once you find a good deal, you got to pounce on. You have to have your private money lender ready to go or your hard money lender ready to go. You got to lock the deal up. You got to close on it and then you got to execute. You've got to get your contractors in there, do what you got to do as fast as you can. Start placing bandit signs in the neighborhood, advertising, owner financing, owner to owner, no banks. Your phone's going to start to ring. That's when it gets exciting. Hey, I'm interested in this house. I'm looking to own, but I'm struggling. I'm self-employed. I make great income. I have a down payment. What can we do? That's when you start to see the dollar signs. That's when all of this work starts to become worth it and you finally execute a deal beginning to end, and then you prove the concept and you say, dang, that wasn't that bad. Now I have a track record. I can do it again, recycle my private money lenders' money so that they continue making a great return on their funds. They're happy. Now you have a cash flowing asset with equity, which you typically don't have on sub 2 deals. I cannot fail to stress that enough. One of the major downsides to only buying sub 2 is you're at risk because you don't have equity. Oftentimes you're going to be okay. Most of the times you're going to be okay. But if things hit the fan and you have to eject on a deal like that, it can be painful because you don't have any other exit strategies. You can't just sell it on the market. Okay, you've got to go out and find another buyer or do whatever it takes. So that is the BRRRR sub 2 model. Nobody's really talking about it. People are still talking about sub 2, which they should be. Sub 2 is great. I'm into sub 2. I still buy sub 2. I like sub 2. And my exit strategy is still sub 2. It's just that on the acquisition strategy, I am developing a system. I wanted to share this with everybody. And it's an evolution in my business model because I realize I know the neighborhoods where I want to buy. How do I buy more houses there? There's just not enough sub 2, and I want to build a portfolio. I want to build legacy wealth, I guess, whatever. I just want to be financially independent as I can, which means predictable, scalable, kind of make it boring so that it's like, oh yeah, just another house in that neighborhood. Yeah, that'll work. We'll do that one. Okay, it doesn't have to be some big risk you're taking every single time. Does this work? Are there buyers? Is this the right asset class? Once you figure it out, you got to dial it into a system and then just hit the gas pedal. And that's what I'm doing. That's my journey. That's the stage of my growth right now. This is the formula to success. This is why sub 2 is great. You want to buy sub 2 if you possibly can. Yes. But I do think that it's a little bit oversold. It's a little bit shiny and flashy, but not as realistic of a actionable plan for a lot of people because of their markets. They just don't have the volume of sub 2 deals. All right, if you found this content helpful and interesting, please like it, share, subscribe. It's what keeps me going and able to continue to produce great content for you guys that I hope propels you forward in your real estate investing careers. Thanks again. My name is Hans. Sub2investor.com. See you next time. Stay creative. Peace.